Deep in the world's forests, countless people claim they weren't alone. From eerie vocalizations echoing through the trees to towering figures caught on camera, these encounters continue to spark debate. Tonight, we'll examine 6 chilling stories backed by eyewitness accounts and footage. Whether you believe or remain skeptical, these mysterious encounters are impossible to ignore. Let's begin. Man filming survival video discovers Bigfoot. Following him and has territory, standoff on camera. A persistent unseen presence tracks a survival filmmaker through the dense woods, making it clear that he is being watched. With the steady hand of someone accustomed to these encounters, the man begins to pan his camera, cautioning the audience that as soon as he acknowledges the source, the figures will retreat. There is no panic in his voice, only the calm acknowledgement of a boundary being tested. As he scans the tree line, a sudden, swift movement disrupts the stillness of the forest. Something large and agile shifts through the brush, vanishing almost as quickly as it appeared. The footage, presented by Sasquatch watchers, captures a man who seems to have developed a strange unspoken protocol with the entities sharing his territory. He stops his pursuit immediately, noting that their structures are positioned just ahead. This isn't just a random sighting, it is a tense standoff of territory.
They're always watching, always. I'm going to turn the camera, and as soon as I look at them, they're going to go, but just keep an eye out. Watch. So I'm not going to go pursue them because their structures are right over there. And as long as they stay on that side of the structures, they're not bothering me. And as long as I stay on this side, I'm not bothering them.
He articulates a clear mutual agreement. As long as the creatures remain on their side of the structures, they leave him alone. And as long as he respects that line, they allow him to continue filming. What makes this footage unusual is the confidence with which the filmmaker describes the situation. Rather than chasing the movement for a better shot, he intentionally backs away.
We'll get with the gifting rock here pretty soon. Snow started to melt now, so I can get back there. But anyway, yeah, pretty cool.
Believing that respecting the unseen boundary prevents the encounters from escalating. Whether viewers agree with his interpretation or not, his calm reaction is unlike most reported Bigfoot encounters. With the winter snow beginning to melt, he mentions plans to return to the area for gifting, suggesting that this interaction is part of an ongoing, rhythmic engagement with the unknown. What do you think was captured here? And would you stay in the woods after realizing you were in the middle of a territorial standoff? The sound came from directly behind the tree he was leaning against, not the rustle of hogs he'd been waiting on, but something heavier, more deliberate. It was October 24, 2013, about 6 p.m., and the hunter was tucked into a swamp roughly 9 miles west of Tunica, Mississippi, dressed head to toe in camo, sitting dead still the way he always did when the light started to fade and the hogs began to move. He turned to look. What he saw wasn't a hog. Crouched beside a dead cypress stump about 50 yards out was something huge and black, its shoulders too broad and its posture too upright for any animal he recognized. It had hands. It was tearing into the stump like it was digging something out, and the sound of bark ripping away carries clearly in the footage between right as he fumbles his iPhone into position. His first instinct was to run. He didn't even think about the rifle in his hands. Instead, in a moment he later described as feeling like everything had slowed down, he started recording by accidentally hitting the button twice, stopping and restarting the video before he finally got it locked on the figure. From the footage shows the creature working at the stump, breaking off what looks like wood or bark and tossing it aside, its movement slow and methodical, completely unbothered by how close it was to the tree line. The hunter, a lifelong outdoorsman used to judging animal size at a glance, put its height at around 7 feet, and he was adamant it didn't move like a bear. The back stayed too straight. the shoulders stayed too square. The footage, later uploaded by Josh Highcliffe under the title, "I think I saw a skunk ape, please help," quickly spread online, with some viewers calling it one of the most convincing pieces of Bigfoot footage ever recorded. Viewers immediately began analyzing every frame, comparing the figure's proportions with nearby trees and the cypress stump for scale. While skeptics argued that poor image quality left room for misidentification, supporters pointed to the creature's posture and deliberate movements as reasons they believed the footage deserved closer examination rather than immediate dismissal. Then came the truck. A vehicle passed on the nearby road, and the creature rose to its full height, the moment that made even skeptics pause, watching a figure with longer legs and broader shoulders than any bear straighten up out of a crouch. That was as far as the hunter could handle. He said later he tried to stay dead quiet, but the second it stood, his nerve broke and he ran, leaving the camera and the last seconds of whatever he'd stumbled onto behind him. He never went back into that part of the swamp again. He'd grown up hearing stories about the skunk ape and the Honey Island swamp monster from the older hunters in the area, but he said he never once thought he'd end up filming proof. So what was crouched by that cypress stump, tearing bark with its bare hands in the Mississippi swamp? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. The engine of the 14-foot aluminum boat had been cut, leaving David Stillo in near total silence on a private lake near Spicer, Minnesota at 4 a.m. As he drifted toward the unlit boat dock, a sudden movement in the shallow water caught his eye. He looked to his right and realized he was not alone. Standing in the water was a massive, hulking shape that appeared to be fishing in the darkness. As he focused, the sheer scale of the figure became clear. It was between 9 and 10 feet tall, with a massive chest cavity estimated at 50 inches or more. The situation escalated instantly when the creature spotted him. It didn't retreat. Instead, it began to aggressively close the distance toward the boat. Trapped in the water in the middle of the night, David reacted on pure instinct, screaming at the creature and swinging a wooden oar to keep it at bay. The creature, covered in long, wavy black hair that obscured its facial features, moved with powerful, muscular limbs and let out distinct, grunting vocalizations. The encounter lasted for 20 terrifying minutes, with the beast coming within 6 feet of the boat, close enough for David to see water droplets clinging to its thick, pungent fur. Every attempt to drift farther away seemed painfully slow, making the distance between the boat and the shoreline feel endless. David knew that if the creature decided to enter deeper water, there would be little he could do to escape. The uncertainty of what it might do next proved just as frightening as the creature's sheer size. Throughout the harrowing standoff, David monitored the creature from the relative safety of the boat as it lingered, seemingly searching for a way to get a better hold of him. The terrifying event was eventually documented through Rocky Mountain Sasquatch, a channel that investigates these types of reports. For David, the experience was life-altering. He noted that no human could survive a physical confrontation with something of that size and strength. Eventually, the figure turned and retreated down a trail leading into a nearby wildlife area, leaving David to recover in the silence of the lake. This incident in Minnesota wasn't an isolated event, as reports of similar creatures frequenting swampy areas and shorelines have surfaced across the Great Lakes region, including sightings in the Chippewa National Forest. While other footage, such as the mysterious clip of a figure carrying an infant across the Cass River in Michigan, has sparked debates among experts, the intensity of David's close-range encounter remains a chilling reminder of what might be lurking in the shadows of the woods. After this night, David vowed never to fish at night again, forever changed by those 20 minutes in the dark near Spicer. After hearing such a visceral, close-range account, what do you think was really stalking the lake that night? At 8:51 p.m., a massive, deep vocalization shattered the silence of Washington's Olympic Peninsula. Seconds later, something heavy began crashing through the dense brush toward the research team. Hidden somewhere beyond the trees, whatever made the haunting call never revealed itself, but it clearly wanted the investigators to know it was there.
Man. What was that? I didn't quite hear that. It came from that. Yeah, I did.
I even heard it.
Are they making noise? Wonder if they're howling.
Why would they?
Chris knows better.
Did you hear that?
Whatever had made the noise moved with deliberate heavy force, snapping branches and crashing through the dense forest undergrowth. The sounds didn't resemble an animal casually moving through the forest. Each heavy step seemed measured, as if whatever was out there wanted the investigators to know it was nearby without ever revealing itself. The researchers froze, listening for another call, but the silence that followed felt almost more unsettling than the vocalization itself. Every second stretched longer as they searched the darkness for any sign of movement. This wasn't the first time the Olympic Project team had faced such unnerving occurrences. In previous years, researchers like Shane Corson and Todd Hale had navigated these same ridges, searching for evidence of a creature many locals suspect inhabits these mountains. On one prior excursion, while traversing a steep ridgeline, the researchers had accidentally stumbled upon something unexpected. A sudden slip on a log created a loud noise, which seemingly alerted a massive creature lurking nearby. The animal, which they estimated to be over 7 feet tall, didn't flee like a typical bear. Instead, it retreated momentarily, only to circle around behind them in a calculated, intelligent display of movement.
We're going through this off trail. We came upon something. I think it hurt us, because right when that went on, Shane said, "You hear that? You hear that? Something's over there." Yeah, it was really clear. Something large was busting through the brush up ahead of us and just heading down the ridge. Big, breaking branches. We both drew our weapons. It went from straight in front of us down to the left.
The evidence of this intelligence is etched into the very landscape. In 2016, a timber surveyor discovered a series of ground nests of massive, woven structures made of huckleberry branches and forest debris that suggested a permanent or semi-permanent presence in the area. During the filming of this investigation by Small Town Monsters, the team ventured into these same deep wood sites to camp overnight, becoming the first to document the area in such a manner.
And this is the first time you guys have ever camped in this area?
Down here, yeah.
Right. Usually we camp on the outskirts of this area, several hundred yards away, and now we're right in the thick of things. I mean, we're right down here. First time ever. We designed it this way, and probably maybe down the road keep doing this sort of camping experience down here.
Inside one of these nests, which spanned roughly 6 by 8 feet, the researchers found signs that defy standard animal behavior. The huckleberry branches had been meticulously stripped of leaves, creating a soft, bowl-like depression.
The one that Derek was talking about that's like 6 feet by 8 feet. Wow. We went over to that, and there's no way you would think bear. I mean, just massive, and it's actually, it looks almost as if it was kind of dug out a little bit, so it kind of makes a bowl, and then you had all that huckleberry just woven around it, and just massive quantities.
The team members, experienced in tracking local wildlife, noted that this level of construction and site selection, positioned on a finger of land that offered a clear view of approaching threats, is highly inconsistent with known regional fauna. As the night deepened during the current expedition, the atmosphere remained heavy with tension. Every snap of a twig or shift in the wind prompted the group to scan the tree line with thermal optics. The team, having spent years documenting these sightings, remained convinced that the sheer difficulty of reaching these sites makes a human hoax statistically impossible.
Whoa. Up your night vision, though.
It does.
I don't need them. I don't need mine yet.
No, I don't. My night vision was shooting looking through this thing. But I mean, we're not sneaking up on anything. Everything already knows we're here.
Right. Yeah.
As the darkness swallowed the valley, the group remained on high alert, listening to the forest for any return of the mysterious vocalizations that had signaled their presence earlier in the evening. What do you think was making those sounds in the middle of the Olympic wilderness? The hair on the back of his neck stood on end as the foul, rotting stench of decay hit him, a warning that he was no longer alone in the remote wilderness of Mount St. Helens. It was the early fall of 1938, and Dewey Shaw, then a young man in his early 20s, was fishing in a remote, pristine lake during an annual backpacking trip with 4 friends. Focused on the crystal clear water, he had been hiding behind foliage to cast his line.
Duis remarked that the water was so clear he had to hide behind foliage and cast over it so as not to spook the fish. Luckily, the fish were biting, and he had caught a few, when all of a sudden he started to feel uneasy, as if he were being watched. The hair on the back of his neck seemed to stand on end.
Successfully reeling in a few trout, when the sudden, suffocating feeling of being watched forced him to turn around. Standing at the edge of the tree line, only 20 to 30 feet away, were 3 towering humanoid creatures completely covered in dark brown hair.
He started to look around, and directly behind him, only 20 to 30 feet away, were 3 giant humanoid creatures covered in dark brown hair, head to toe, standing at the tree line.
The smallest of the trio matched his own impressive 6-foot 4-inch frame, but its immense shoulder width and sheer bulk suggested a weight far beyond any man he had ever known. The other 2 figures were even more daunting, standing over 7 and 8 feet tall, respectively. Fear paralyzed him.
Duis was a large man, around 6'4", and the smallest of the 3 was just as tall as him. However, it was much wider at the shoulders, much thicker.
These giants stood between him and the only path back to his camp, effectively boxing him in against the water. As the silence of the woods pressed in, he realized his only options were to leap into the lake or attempt to de-escalate the tension. In a desperate, calculated move, Shaw returned to his fishing, casting his line back into the water. When he caught another trout, the gravity of the moment peaked. He unhooked the fish and tossed it toward the tree line. The smallest creature stepped forward, retrieved the offering, and returned to its companions.
He cast in his line and began to fish again. Shortly after that, he caught another nice trout. Reeling it in, it dawned on him that these creatures may be here for his fish. He unhooked the trout and tossed it to them.
For several tense moments, none of them made another move. Shaw later recalled that the creatures never behaved like predators preparing to attack. Instead, they watched him with an eerie patience that made the encounter even harder to explain. Their silence, combined with the deliberate way they accepted the fish, left him wondering whether they understood far more than any ordinary animal could. He repeated this act, feeding the creatures as a form of appeasement, until, as quickly as they had appeared, they vanished back into the shadows.
Tossed another fish to them. The smaller of the 3 Bigfoot retrieved it again. Duis threw another fish at them and began to cast and fish again. When Duis grabbed a really nice 4th trout to toss back to them,
Shaw immediately abandoned his gear and fled to find his friends, who were foraging for berries on the other side of the lake. To his shock, they were already scrambling to pack their camp in a panic, having encountered the same 3 entities during their hunt. The group abandoned their trip, hiking out in record time, forever haunted by the encounter.
it took the group only a day to hike out, downhill and motivated by fear. 4 out of the 5 of them had seen these 3 Bigfoot. They did not know what they were. They had never heard of anything like that.
It would take decades for Shaw to find a name for what he saw, finally realizing in 1967, when the Patterson-Gimlin footage aired, that these were the same beings he had faced. This account, shared by the team at Rocky Mountain Sasquatch, highlights the long, often terrifying history of encounters near the volcano. The researchers themselves have experienced everything from unsettling vocalizations on their first night near Yale Lake to discover massive, deep-set tracks near Ape Canyon that were made despite the sun-baked, hard-packed earth.
20 miles from the Mount St. Helens volcano, and one of the tracks, it stepped really close to the creek, and its track filled with water. It was so deep. Really neat impressions. This last Bigfoot expedition to St. Helens, we found another set of Bigfoot tracks in Ape Canyon. Can you believe it?
After hearing this story, what is your explanation for why these creatures were interacting with the fishermen instead of attacking? The camera shutter clicked, capturing a snapshot that would soon haunt a man from Canada and his companion. On August 12, 2018, a couple stood near the shore of Little Limestone Lake in Manitoba, preparing for a canoe trip. In the immediate foreground, the subjects were oblivious to the anomaly lurking just behind them. When the photograph was later reviewed, a dark, hulking figure became visible in the background, partially obscured by the natural environment. It wasn't a shadow or a trick of the light.
I expected the plethora of keyboard Bigfoot experts out there to point me in the right direction or provide a link that would resolve this amazing photo. Not a single person has shown or provided a thing to resolve the subject in the background of this photo other than opinions without any substantial proof.
The figure possessed a distinct corporeal presence that seemed to be observing the two unsuspecting people. The witness, a man named Malcolm, later reached out to the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization to share the unsettling discovery, describing the figure as something far more disturbing than a simple background error. As the image was scrutinized and zoomed in, the creature's appearance took on a grotesque, almost otherworldly quality. The figure appeared aged, with thin or patchy hair on its head, but thick, matted fur covering the rest of its body. Its skin looked weathered, bearing the marks of what appeared to be severe health issues or advanced age, a detail that led Malcolm to compare the sight to something straight out of a horror film. The more the image was enlarged, the more questions it raised. Rather than becoming blurrier like a distant shadow normally would, the figure continued to show a defined outline against the surrounding trees.
RMSL responds, looking at the original photo and then the zoom in is rather creepy. Malcolm responds back, yup, creepy. They got on a canoe right after this picture. I respond back, that creature looks like something out of Walking Dead, more so than I would expect a Bigfoot to look like.
That unexpected level of detail fueled online debates, with some insisting it captured an unknown creature, while others argued it was simply an unusual trick of perspective. The couple had been entirely unaware of the presence mere feet away, boarding their canoe moments after the shutter snapped, completely oblivious to the photobombing entity. For Malcolm, who claims to have had 4 prior encounters with the species in his 36 years, this was no bear or misidentified animal. Using a map to illustrate the geography of the area, he pointed to the red pin marking Little Limestone Lake and noted how the location sat in proximity to his own personal sighting history across the region.
Malcolm responds with the map. The red pin at the bottom is the Limestone Lake. I'm the blue dot at the top, and all the blue X's are where my sighting reports have happened. RMSL responds, thank you for spending the time familiarizing us with all of this and the creature in the photo.
Whether this figure was a relic of the forest or something else entirely remains a subject of intense debate. The next seconds would reveal one of the most unsettling discoveries ever captured in the wilderness. At first, the forest looked completely ordinary. Then the camera shifted, revealing 3 colossal nest-like structures hidden beneath the trees. These were not random piles of branches. Each thick limb appeared carefully woven together, creating massive shelters that looked intentionally built. Fresh leaves covered the top, making them resemble giant resting places for something enormous. The silence surrounding them was just as disturbing. No birds, no wind, no movement. As the explorer moved deeper, more structures appeared, raising a terrifying question. What could have created something so massive? The investigation changed when the team discovered multiple shelters across the area, suggesting this was not a random formation. Each structure measured nearly 9 feet long, and inside one, they found a deep impression that suggested something large may have rested there. The mystery was no longer about the nests, it was about what had been living inside them.
Hey, Russ, up here.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. That is huge.
It's like woven together.
This is what we ran into right here in California when we found 2 nests. But now we're looking at 3, which would indicate we're looking at 3 different creatures on this mountain.
Tell me this wouldn't be the alpha position.
To me, this spells out like some kind of family group where you've got an alpha watching out for the other group members. And if we have a little one in a group,
Right.
it's usually going to nest with the mother.
That makes total sense.
The moment the investigation team moved closer, the true scale of the discovery became impossible to ignore. Standing before them was a massive woven structure hidden deep within the forest. It looked less like a simple nest and more like a giant cradle created for something beyond ordinary explanation. The size was overwhelming. A person could step inside and still have room, but the dimensions were not the only mystery. The way these structures were positioned together made the discovery even more unusual. They did not appear randomly placed. The team began wondering if these shelters were part of a larger system created by something living unseen in the wilderness. Every detail was measured and recorded, yet more questions appeared. Because this no longer looked like a natural formation, it appeared to be a hidden shelter system created by something powerful, intelligent, and possibly still nearby.
When I look at the size of this thing, I could fit 2 of me inside of this. And just the way these nests were situated together leads me to believe that this was more than likely a family of Bigfoot.
Wow.
Okay, right here, right at the edge.
9 feet. So for reference, I'm going to label this one just alpha nest
Great.
and write down the measurements, and we'll just go to all of them, get all that first,
Yeah.
and then we just start diving in.
Great.
The investigation reached a major moment when the team finally measured the enormous structures. Each nest stretched nearly 9 feet in length, a size that immediately raised questions about what could have created something so large. For what not, this discovery transformed the entire investigation. 3 matching shelters built on a similar scale suggested this was not a random arrangement. The possibility of a Sasquatch family group using these structures became harder to ignore. Then the team discovered a deep impression inside one nest, a sign that something massive may have rested there. The mystery was no longer only about what created these shelters. The bigger question was what had been living inside them.
All right, let's measure this one.
Yep. We're at 9 feet on this one.
Same.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Same.
Here.
Yep, I got it. Right at 8 feet.
These other 2 nests are measuring to be about the same size as the first one, which means there are at least 3 creatures here. And if this is a family grouping with the mother sharing the nest, then we could be looking at possibly 4 Bigfoot.
7.5 feet.
Yeah.
Man, I'm almost seeing like an impression in here too. Are you guys catching that?
If you really look at the composition of it, you'd have to imagine that something had to have been inside in order to get this done and mat it down in this way.
Yeah, right.
Which is great for us because we may be able to find some DNA in there.
Yeah. Speaking of, what's the best way to pull some of this DNA?
The investigation reached a critical moment as the team searched for evidence hidden within the massive structure. They carefully marked the location, hoping to recover a possible DNA sample before an approaching storm destroyed any remaining clues. But stepping inside revealed something even more unbelievable. The enormous shelter was large enough for several people to stand inside comfortably. The discovery left the team facing a haunting question. What powerful presence could have created something this massive and hidden within the wilderness?
Detected something right here, so I'm going to go ahead and set that. That way we can keep that data, and I'm going to collect exactly from that spot. It's going to give us our best chances of getting any kind of DNA signature. I'm trying to collect as much evidence as we can while we still have it, because I don't know what's going to be left when this next storm hits.
Good grief, Maria.
Now that I'm in here, look at the size of this thing. Look.
You look like you're in a 6-person hot tub.
I mean, this thing could accommodate several huge humans.
The evidence raised more questions than answers, but one thing remained clear. Something unusual had happened here. At first, the forest appeared completely empty. It was a quiet morning in March 2023 near Bartlett, New Hampshire, where the dense woodland seemed strangely still. The usual sounds of nature were missing. No birds calling, no animals moving, and no signs of life among the trees. Then, something unexpected caught a hiker's attention. Deep within the forest, a massive dark figure emerged between the trees. Its broad shoulders, unusual size, and strange movements made it look unlike anything normally found in the wilderness. Hidden behind the bushes, the hiker remained completely motionless, slowly lifting his camera to record what was unfolding. The footage, later shared by Sasquatch Mafia, captured only a few brief moments of the mysterious figure moving through the woods. But as the camera appeared to capture its clearest view, the figure suddenly disappeared into the thick brush. No footsteps, no sounds, no explanation, just a short clip, and a mystery that continues to raise one question: what was really moving through those trees? Deep in the remote Colorado wilderness, a peaceful river expedition took a shocking turn when a group of explorers encountered something they could not explain. While navigating the upper Colorado River, the team pulled ashore for a brief stop, but their quiet break was interrupted when movement in the nearby forest caught their attention. Hidden among the trees, a strange figure appeared, crossing the landscape in a way that left everyone watching in disbelief. Nearly 500 yards away, lead guide Logan Kirk and around 12 others witnessed the massive silhouette moving through the wilderness. With no clear explanation and no answers, the group was left questioning what they had truly seen. Was it an unknown creature roaming the Colorado backcountry, or another possible clue in the decades-old mystery of Bigfoot? This strange encounter later gained attention after being featured by Daily Mail, bringing new curiosity to one of the world's most enduring mysteries. What do you think they really witnessed? Share your theories in the comments.